This is an amazing start. So I just wanted to remind the audience that in this short discussion period, you can get to hear some of the process behind the work, because you see these incredible finished projects, and in any example of good design, it seems obvious and simple. But actually, a lot of work and a lot of failed attempts went into that, and the failures are sometimes as important as the successes. So first, Ruth, I have to ask you, did you meet your husband online?
I did not.
And did you consider pretending that you did to convince your users that your idea is still the best way to meet people?
I didn't, but I feel like because we met in unusual circumstances, we actually met in summer camp. I don't really have a very original love story. It was actually somewhat similar to Crush Club in that it was an environment that allowed people to be themselves and just get to know one another. I actually had a really bad impression of him when I first met him, so if we did meet through online dating or past each other, hello? Yeah. I probably would have not swiped right, and then I would not be married. And so I think sometimes we make snap judgments too quickly.
Right.
We need time to really get to know one another.
So that's interesting and funny. I don't know if your husband is here. Does he know
Yeah,
that
he's
he
right
made a
there.
bad impression? Sorry, bud. No, you know. But
He knows.
somehow it worked out. And what I'm curious about in your arrangement with people meeting for the first time, did you find or did you worry about users still having the possibility for a bad first impression? Or did you feel like the way your prompts are set up that it makes it less likely?
I was a little bit worried, but I think because I framed it as a social experiment, in some ways that was very successful. You know when you go out traveling and then all of a sudden you get this tingling feeling that you want to take a chance or do something different? That was the kind of, feeling that I was trying to bring into the experience so that people would be willing to try. So even if they wouldn't normally do that, it was creating like that moment for them. And to be honest, I didn't know what was going to happen. I told you, it was an experiment. I did it the first time, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And it all worked out, Turns out when you put humans in the room, they can self-organize.
Yeah, well, I think it's an incredible combination and a really important one moving forward in design of a way of merging physical, real world, the desire for people to have real contact without technology, but also facilitating that with technology. I think it's a great blend.
The last point I should make is that it's knowing when technology should begin and end. So I use a lot of data science and a lot of techniques to do the sorting. I kind of oversimplified. But it's knowing, when it needs to end and when we need to put humanity first. So I think that was knowing where to draw that line.
Right, and that theme actually, which is why you're all grouped together in that theme, all of you, I think, share that belief in your design work. James, I'm curious, do you want your users to think of Kumii as a real human, or to know that it's some kind of AI chatbot and it's important that there's something neutral about it because it's actually not a real person?
So what I was going for was to make it feel as human as possible, because there are a lot of chatbots out there that exist, but they feel mechanical, or they feel like the content in them isn't necessarily something that people would want to listen to. When I was doing kind of competitive analysis, I added a lot of chatbots to my channel, and there was just a ton of notifications, and they felt very mechanical. So I was looking for a way to kind of humanize recommendations or notifications from a chatbot. So I was going for a human feel.
Right, that's great. And did you find that anyone started opening up to Kumii as if like mistakenly thinking it was a real person, or like kind of a therapist, and you're like, actually, it's
Right.
just a chatbot?
So I tested with about 15 different people over the time that I was testing Kumii, and there were people halfway in, they didn't know if it was me or a chatbot. I mean, I was doing this over SMS. So there were people who actually asked me, is this actually James or is it a messaging system?
Right.
So I didn't tell them either way, but there were people that that thought that it was an actual robot.
Yeah, like the famous ELIZA experiment, for those of you who remember computers in the 80s. So, Song, I think it's amazing that you made your work about something that was so personal to you, and that's what many people hide. And I can identify, because I also have a chronic condition, being diabetic, and I almost never say that out loud. I don't think I ever have. So that is like really inspiring. It's okay. But I think it's really inspiring for all the millions of women who have this condition, many of whom probably feel very alone, I would guess. So I'm wondering, well, I have two questions for you. The first one is, did you actually personally get support from people through your own app when you were user testing it, or did that come from meeting people in person just through your research, things that you found useful for yourself?
I think it's really coming from the real people. I could say that, I mean, throughout the research and interviewing people, I connect with other people with chronic conditions, not just PCOS, but other chronic conditions as well. And I was really surprised, like one of the best thing about the research process was that I got to talk to a lot of people with chronic conditions. And it's crazy like how they're willing to share their stories, which is really touching to me. And it was really, really amazing to see that, you know, all those stories become together. And I really believe that because of that, you know, people want to share their stories, people want to share their journeys. Because of that, I really believe that my service can become a powerful archive for people with chronic conditions.
And is there a mechanism in your app or an arrangement from transitioning to real-world meetings? I know that there's a lot of conversational threads and a lot of support within the app. Is there also an encouragement, or does the app organize for you a way to meet in person?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I thought about also having a local support groups. That's different from meetups or other support groups coordinated by hospitals. But I think scale-wise, it was better for me to just focus on online, smaller scale support group experience. But I really believe that having that in-person support group experience is really important. So eventually, I want to develop my product, not only just an online experience, but also have that physical feel to it, in-person online, in-person support group experience. Yeah.
Right, thank you. It's great. Did that sound flippant? Not at all. I think it's incredible work. Now, David, you're also working with a huge population that sometimes feels like it's in its own world, doesn't have its own voice, with a lot of struggles that are understood within the community, like with PCOS. People who deal with it know what it's like, and sometimes they feel like the rest of the world has no clue, I would guess. So I have my first question for you is, and I know you showed this in your last slide, the Designing for Autism effort. How much has the greater community been aware of what you're doing? Have you been keeping it close to you while you iterate, or are you sharing it with the community? Are people excited in the community about it?
So I've talked about it a lot with people from Designing for Autism, but really it's kind of been just my immediate people that I get feedback from within SVA here, as well as my thesis advisor, Mark Sarabian. He's an assistive technology expert who's been doing this for nearly 30 years. And he's seen every iteration of these types of devices and apps. But really the stuff that we've done so far with Designing for Autism was focused more on learning from other design disciplines. So we had a panel discussion last year in San Francisco with a roboticist who was working on social robots for autism research, a video game designer who was creating a video game specifically for people on the autism spectrum, and also Catalin Voss from the Autism Glass Project, where they're using Google Glass to help people learn, facial recognition of maybe emotional cues that don't come as naturally to them. So really, the benefit for me has been seeing what design principles have come out of these other disciplines, and what can we learn, even from, I spoke with a woman who does horse therapy for nonverbal autistic people, where they help them learn how to ride a horse independently over time. And she talked a lot about adaptability, where they actually adapt the horse to the individual. So in some cases, people need a more rhythmic horse because it helps calm them down. And she said, why doesn't the technology do that? And that was kind of my first insight into adaptability as a design principle. And we had a whole event on adaptability and the autism spectrum as a topic. So for me, it's been great to learn from these other people that have been doing, great work in different areas of design. But now I'd like to open it up and really see who's interested in contributing to this as, whether it's an open source project or what it unfolds as. I'm not exactly sure, but I feel like by opening it up, it could benefit the community and elevate it in a way that I can't do on my own.
And what does it need most next to become a real product?
I think it needs to go through more testing. I've tested it, but there's just so much more. I mean, this is such a complex field where every person on the autism spectrum is so unique and different. So whenever I tell people I have a brother that is nonverbal who has autism, they say, oh, does he do this? Does he do that? Can he count cards? And there's all these misconceptions that, people with autism are this way, but there's a saying that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And so it makes it extremely difficult to design anything for this community. And just the challenges of trying to do user testing with a population that can't speak is extremely difficult to understand. What is this working, is it not, and how to validate design decisions. It's been a much more complex and difficult topic area. I came to grad school thinking I wanted to redesign the current communication apps and the way that they worked, but I realized that it's much more complex than that, and that there's an issue with even motivation to want to communicate. So what will even motivate somebody to want to use these apps to have, to communicate thoughts or feelings? So.
Well, I want to encourage everyone in the audience, if you're interested in the work of these students or any of the students, please, and during the break, you can use our hashtag, #TheGraduateShow17, to post or tweet about things you're thinking, or even to get in contact with our students if you want to find out more. And a big congratulations to the 4 of you. Thank you so much.